This NES did not work. Most of the games wouldn't boot, and the ones that did needed to be wrestled into the slot. Sometimes the graphics looked comically garbled. Turns out boiling one of the components in water did the trick. I'll get to that in a minute. I have a few legit NES games, and I noticed that only Super Mario Bros. Would boot consistently. Everything else either shows a white screen or does the notorious blinking red light. A white screen usually means the CPU is running, but reading garbage data from the cartridge. So, some of the pins are making contact, but not all of them. The blinking red light is a different problem entirely, which I'll get to later. So I took the console apart, and it is a little bit rough in here. There are dead bugs on the bottom, some weird material on the bottom of the circuit board, and rust on the metal shielding. But from the outside, it looked almost new. So we're gonna clean this up with some soapy water and blast these bugs away. Now, one thing about these internal connectors, you always want to pull them by the plastic housing, never by the wire. But some of these have almost no plastic to grab onto, so a small plastic wedge works well to pry them off. This is something people never show in their videos. They just cut to the part where they're easily pulling out the power cord, as if it's nothing. Don't grab these by the wire, you might break the connector. Anyway, I cleaned up the motherboard, cleaned the connectors, put it back together, and it's still mostly the same issue. Mario boots, everything else does not. So the problem wasn't the dirt and bugs. It's good to have a clean board, but the actual issue is somewhere else. There's a 72-pin connector that sits between the motherboard and the cartridge slot. When you push the cartridge down, a spring-loaded carriage presses it onto these 72 pins on each side. Every single one of those pins needs to make solid contact with the cartridge's edge connector for the game to boot. After 40 years, those pins lose their spring tension and flatten out. So I pulled the connector off the motherboard and went through each pin with the pick, bending them back up to improve the contact angle. After bending the pins, things improved a lot, but I noticed something specific. If I push the cartridge down, like I'm about to eject it, the game works fine every time. But if I let the cartridge sit in the normal locked position, it doesn't boot. Turns out, metal has kind of a shape memory. Heating it up allows those crystals to rearrange and the metal to recover some of its original springiness. You can do this by putting the 72-pin connector in boiling water for about 10 to 20 minutes. I was a little suspicious though, and slightly worried about eating the plastic fumes, but I did it anyway. After boiling, the pins were noticeably straighter.
What the dog doing?
Just as straight as me. The plastic housing is a little discolored, but it seems fine. The cartridge is definitely harder to insert now, which is a good sign since it means the pins are grouping tighter. And just like that, Super Mario Bros. 3 boots right up. Games I've never seen get past the title screen are working now. But there's still an issue. Sometimes the game starts clean, and sometimes I get the blinking red light of death and have to reseat the cartridge before it cooperates. The CIC lockout chip kills the boot. This is where the blinking red light comes from. So the fix is easy. Disconnect pin 4 from the 31938 chip and the blinking problem goes away entirely. My goal was to use a soldering iron to heat pin 4 and lift it off the pad with tweezers. You can also just snip it with diagonal cutters if you don't want to use a soldering iron. Either way, you're just breaking one connection. However, I accidentally snapped the pin off the chip instead, but it still served the same purpose. Oh well. After doing this process, the power LED stays solid at all times now, even with no cartridge inserted. That's normal, it means the reset loop is gone. Here's an important reassembly note, and it's super important, no one talks about it online. When you're putting the cartridge tray back into the NES, there's a plastic tab on the front of the tray that needs to sit below the motherboard. If you just drop the tray on, the tab rides on top of the motherboard and pushes it up, which messes with the seating of the whole assembly. You have to slide the tray forward a little and get the tab underneath, and then set it down. I assembled it wrong the first time, so learn from my mistake. So I put everything back together, and after the CIC mod, I powered it on, I got a solid red light, and nothing on the screen. I got pretty discouraged, and I felt like I was about to give up on it. Maybe I broke something on the motherboard. But I opened it back up, and I noticed those capacitors I'd bent out of the way were leaning over pretty far. Now I didn't think they were shorting or anything, but I straightened them back out, reassembled the console, and well, no fuss. It started right up. No blinking lights or garbled graphics. That was the solution. Now, I know you can easily emulate these games, and this really shows the importance of emulation. But there's something about playing on the original hardware that's different. So I'm pretty happy with this. I'm very glad the boiling water technique was apparently the fix for the console. But if I do get cancer in 10 years from the plastic fumes, well, this will be why.